Hi, guys, and welcome back to our podcast.
Hey, everybody.
So we're in our backyard. We just wrapped our movie, Bed Rest.
We wrapped a couple days ago, and I've gone, and some of you might know that I built the studio in our atrium of our house, and I decided that I want to reclaim my house as a living quarter. So I've decided to start destroying the studio and making it livable.
Okay, so this is what happened. So we shot Bed Rest, and one of the last scenes we needed scaffolding because we're supposed to be shooting up from a window looking into the neighborhood. So Andrew got really excited about renting the
The
scaffolding.
reason why we needed scaffolding was because we need to look into other people's windows, and we weren't close enough, so we had to get the camera to the height of the second floor.
That's what he says, but I think he really wanted to rent the scaffolding for himself because,
Well, it was either rent a 300 millimeter lens or scaffolding.
yes. So we picked the scaffolding. Anyways, to make a long story short, we wrapped, and I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, I'm so tired. It's been such a long 3 weeks. Great 3 weeks, but, a lot of work. And I'm thinking we're going to go home and chill out. And so I had something to do the next day. I had to return all the wardrobe. So I go to Toronto and I return the wardrobe. I come back. Andrew has already, by himself, set up the entire scaffolding in our atrium and has torn down like 2 of the 4 walls and part of the ceiling.
Well, it has to get done. We're shooting another movie in 3 weeks, so
Yeah.
I have a window of 3 weeks to, I guess,
Destroy
do
things.
what I need to do around the house.
Yeah. So the upside of making indie films is that you get to use these great little things for your own purposes at times. But yeah, no rest for the wicked. And then also I walk into the living room and he is all of a sudden building a desk for his
I have 3 weeks to do stuff. I have to do stuff in 3 weeks.
anyways, okay. So let's jump into today's topic. We had a question about government funding. So we thought that we would tell you our take on and our experience on government funding, which is, good or bad.
Well, you're really the expert on this.
Right.
What was the movie we just watched? We just watched The Founder,
Yes.
and there's a great line where they say persistence is the number one reason for why people are successful. And it's a great movie. It's about McDonald's, and Michael Keaton has this line where he says, there's a lot of talented people out there that are failures,
Hmm.
and all it takes is the persistence. And you know what? I would say that without you pursuing forms of government funding, I would be a talented person that is just wrecking his house without making movies.
Well, no. So, and there's a lot of truth.
Talented.
There's a lot of truth to that. Perseverance, and you keep trying and trying and trying and get a lot of no's. And we're at a point in our career where now I think we're at 11 feature films that we've done so far and 2 TV shows because it keeps climbing. But to be honest, some of the government funding I still can't get. I cannot get them, and it's driving me nuts. But some of them we've been very lucky to be extremely supported by others. So I'm going to go through our list and tell you what my experience is and our experiences. I'm going to start with the latest story that we have of government funding with Country Crush.
You want to start with that?
Oh, okay, I'm going to start with good stuff.
Yeah, you got to end with that. Like that's like the climax.
Okay, so you guys have to watch this whole episode to hear the good story at the end. But okay, so we're going to start with Dark Rising. So once we finished Dark Rising, we wanted to jump into the second feature and the TV show, and that's a whole other podcast that we're going to jump into coming up. But in terms of really getting the financing going, we needed some extra money because we had a commitment from a broadcaster, but it wasn't enough. And I come from Northern Ontario, and I had heard a rumor of there being some new government funding in Northern Ontario. And it was called the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund. So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Why not? And we had been denied by every other government funding to date. So I was like, well, it doesn't hurt to try this. So we applied, and the greatest thing about this fund, I think it's more of a private fund. I want to say more than a government fund.
It's a private fund to bring opportunity to the North.
Yeah. They wanted to grow the film industry up north. And back then, we were one of the first projects to apply. And they actually looked at the application for the value of the project. So they were looking at the business plan, at the distribution plan, marketing plan, all of that stuff, as opposed to other government agencies, which really are looking just at who you are and what you've done with them in the past, right? So they gave us an opportunity to actually move forward with this project. And they gave us $360,000 on our first project.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed us to do Dark Rising 2 and Savage Tales, because with that and then some funding from broadcasters and a little bit of private money, we were off to the races. And through the years, that particular fund has been involved in Night Cries, Country Crush, and the two Dark Risings. Anything else?
Two Dark Risings.
Yeah. And on every single occasion, and I can't say this enough, but if you guys are looking for a fund that actually is open to filmmakers that might not have a name yet, but have a really strong idea and strong business plan, then they're the ones to go to, because they have no preconceived notions of what, who people are. They're just like, oh, this is a good business plan, or this is not. And some of our projects have been financed, and some of them they actually passed on later on in years, where it was like, oh, but it was based on, they really either feel it's great or not.
I think we should probably take a little bit step back and talk about the fact, the role that government funding and these grants really has on independent films, because it's sad to say that without these, I would like to say that the industry, the Canadian film industry, could sustain itself without these grants. But really, I feel like without them, it would collapse under the weight, with that and the tax credit.
Yeah, I mean, the tax credit is a huge portion of our financing. And I'd say, like, we've done a lot of films without any government funding. Yeah. It's always the lower budget stuff that doesn't need the government assistance. Like, the two projects
the tax credit is government funding.
Yeah.
I mean, it does come from, it comes from the people.
Yeah.
And I think that's, see, I would like to be able to say that you release a movie, you make a movie, and you don't actually have to rely on the people funding it, that tax credit. But the fact of the matter is that our industry will actually go away without that tax credit.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And that's the hard truth. We saw it in Nova Scotia a bit when they fluctuated the tax credit even a couple percentage points, and the entire industry just picked up and left.
For sure. Well, I mean, for those of you that haven't worked with a tax credit before, the way it works is they give you a portion of your money back on labor spent in both in the province and in the country. So there's two. There's the provincial one, so each province has a certain rate, and then there's the federal one, which has an overall, Canadian spend. And it is a huge portion of your financing. Like, usually it's at least 25%. It can be higher if you start using the regional bonuses and whatnot. And it's really important to do well. Oh, we should tell. I'm going to tell you a quick little story of our latest tax credit.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So it's really important when you jump into a project, whatever your budget is. Let's say you're making a movie for even $150,000. You could get $50,000 in tax credit once you're done if you do the proper paperwork. And I've always been involved in doing every single tax credit on all of our projects. And it's been, it's a very intense, thing to do, because there's a lot of paperwork and whatnot. But I've always done it right. And so at the end, we've always gotten a check. And I remember on Medium Raw, our project was with $1.5 million. And when I got that check for $600,000, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I thought of running away with you to some cool place, but no, we put it in the bank account, and I've been doing it ever since. But then on Night Cries, it was just a normal tax credit. I did it, and I sent it in. And the rules kind of change sometimes, and you have to really pay attention to things. And I kind of messed it up. And before I knew it, like, the tax credit was only like $55,000 through through the OMDC, which is one of the tax credits. And to make a long story short, there's certain rules. So one of the rules is in post-production, you have to spend 95% of your post-production in Ontario to qualify. We've always had a composer out in the US. It's just what we've always done. We have this amazing guy, Amir. We've talked about him before. And we always go through him. And it's never been a problem in the past because we've always had,
a larger budget
and enough post-production to account for it. So it wasn't a rule that I was aware of. And then so on this one, we spent $3,000 on an American composer, and it nullified the $55,000 that we were counting on. And I just almost died. And it was my mistake.
I mean, that's the trick with lower budgets, right? I mean, that percentage goes up.
Oh my gosh. And the worst part is, it wasn't like we didn't do our post-production in Ontario. We absolutely did. Anybody that watched Night Cries, we had entire digital characters. We had, Andrew did all the editing and the color timing and everything. So I called up the OMDC and I was like, oh my gosh, I have all these deferred amounts. Like, does this count? Because I can't lose that $55,000 on an indie film. That's disastrous, right? So to make a long story short again.
We need another plane to go by and just drone by. Because I'm sure people at home are like, get to the good stories.
Okay,
get to the good stories.
This
is so... No, this is actually really important for independent filmmakers. Because the thing is to get to the point where we're in front of the camera and we're shooting stuff. I mean, people don't know what goes on in the offices. Yeah. This is where the films actually really get made.
Yeah, it's
right?
2 years in the office and then 3 weeks shooting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you do all this work before and after for those 3-4 weeks maybe.
Yeah. So to fix my problems, what I did is I called the OMDC and I told them that I was going to provide every single piece of document to show that we had entire deferrals to make up that other 95% in Ontario. And I went back to my accountant and I was like, we need to incorporate all of these contracts that I hadn't put in. And we got our tax credit, thank God. But so don't make stupid mistakes like I did.
It wasn't a stupid mistake. It was legitimately the fact that there was a $3,000 cost that wasn't Canadian.
Yeah, which is
right. I mean,
it was the fact that we didn't include the actual expenses in Ontario, like thinking that I was like, oh, it's just gonna be more work if I put all the deferrals in, so I'm just not gonna put them in.
Exactly.
Put them in. Oh, hi. This is Peanut.
This is Peanut. she's come to hang out. So so what do you want to talk about next?
Well, do you want to go into the story?
Sure.
Okay.
So I have a feeling that Telefilm just doesn't like my face, or at least someone at Telefilm doesn't like my face. Because no matter what, we just can't get Telefilm financing. And, there's other, people out there that I know that can't get Telefilm financing either. And I think it's just that they don't like your face either. So
I think this comes back to perseverance, right? So I'm not going to give up on Telefilm. I'm going to keep going and going and going until they support one of our projects. But it is a tough nut to crack. I don't know how other independent filmmakers feel about it, but I have tried consistently to build great relationships with the people at Telefilm, and I've tried numerous times to approach them with projects, and it's always been a struggle. But
wait. Build relationships? Is that the key? Oh my God. All this time. And it's building relationships.
It's part of it.
I would never have guessed.
Okay. Anyways. So when we were doing Country Crush, I was like, finally, we've got this project that they're going to love. They cannot say no to Country Crush because it's a family project. It's, it's a musical, which is totally cool.
It's a country musical,
which has never been done.
Hasn't been done since Oklahoma, really.
It's written by a Canadian. All the songs are Canadian. The entire cast, short of one person, is Canadian. Like, it's a Canadian movie, right? And I was so proud of it. And I'm like, we're going to make this happen.
We actually had a test read and sing along at the Telefilm offices to pitch them on the idea. It went great.
We worked so hard on that pitch too. We cast.
People work hard all the time. I'm just saying it was actually a good pitch.
It was great. We had all the actors come in, and it wasn't the actors that were cast. It was just people that we asked for favors that came in and did an amazing read through with all the singing. And we had it at, like you said, at Telefilm. We invited people from.
We felt really good about it afterwards, and I think that the reception
Mhm.
of the project was actually very good.
It was, yeah. We
You
had
know,
distributors there. We had E1. We had Phase 4.
yep.
Yeah. Anyways, so then we do it and we finish and we're like, oh my God, that was amazing. And
I don't think I've ever been that excited about anything in my entire life,
yeah, it was so cool.
except maybe the my wedding with you. But
Aw.
like her reaction there about, oh my God, this is so cool. That wasn't me. I was like, no, it was good. We have a shot. That's what I was thinking.
I was thinking, we got this. We got this. And then we look over at the people from Telefilm and, we start having a conversation and there's a military theme to this movie. And we were discussing the fact that we would shoot it two ways. We would shoot it a Canadian version.
Okay, so
and a US version.
here's the thing. I felt like the themes involved in the story, you could show the same movie in Canada and the US, and people would enjoy it in both countries. It wasn't. It was themes of family, of love, of
Loss.
loss, patriotism. I felt like both countries would benefit from seeing that movie. And my plan all along was to shoot two versions, the Canadian version and the American version, and really just swap out the flags and a couple of the military emblems. And I mean, there's two reasons there, right? I mean, Canadians have been brought up to freely accept American media. We'll watch American war movies without batting an eye, but I don't know if the same could be said for Canadian war movies playing in America. I mean, generally, Americans will watch American war movies and don't really care too much about Canadian war movies. So I felt for Country Crush, the project, I mean, I have a responsibility, not just to my investors, but to my actors, to really get the movie in front of the most amount of eyeballs possible. And I felt like if we were to restrict ourselves to just the Canadian version, you're going to not penetrate the American market. So the plan was always to do two versions. And then
one of the people from Telefilm.
The Lion King basically says that if you do two versions, we are out.
Yeah, they wanted just the Canadian version, which would have cut.
But see, here's my thing with that. He knew I wasn't going to do, like, he knew I wasn't going to choose it because it would have been a dumb call.
It would have been from a business perspective. It would have been very difficult because our partners and the money was coming from the U.S. So we were really going to Telefilm for only, I think it was $150,000 out of $2.1 million. So for us to jeopardize all of our financing to go Canadian was just not an option for us from a business perspective.
I felt like what he was doing was putting us in a box that he knew that we were going to jump out of.
Well, I mean, we don't know that for sure. Like, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. And anyways, either way, it didn't go well. So we left that meeting after being so excited. We left that meeting completely deflated and realized that there would be no support on this project from Telefilm. So we moved on and we went to the OMDC. So not the tax credit, but the OMDC production fund. And I was like, you know what? They want last in, for a small amount. Again, I was like, 150,000, no problem. The rest of the money is all in. It's 2.1 million. There's no way they're going to say no. It's a solid business plan. We have not only partners in the US that are amazing, but we also had the biggest country record label in Canada on board. We had, and they were going to release it in the US as well. So we had just all the pieces. And then so we applied to the OMDC production fund and I'm like expecting a yes. Without doubt. Go through the process twice. First time they said no. I was like, okay. So then went through the process all over again, submitted again, and again, I got the no. And I couldn't understand, like literally could not understand because this was it's a great project.
She said to me, I don't understand.
And so I called them up and I was like, I just want to know what happened. I'm like, what did I do wrong? Because I've applied for different projects and I understand no's on past projects, but this one, I'm like, we have a solid resume. We have done this numerous times. We have solid, everything's in place. And the answer I am being completely honest with this. The answer was, yeah, but we felt like we just really don't know you.
You don't know Somerville? The Warrior of Worlds? The Huntress of Demons?
No, I was like, but I'm on IMDb and I've sent my resume and I am just a phone call away. I'm happy to come in. I've actually called to see if we can have coffee. Like, I'm like, so the entire business plan didn't matter because you didn't know who I was. I'm like, but it's not a secret. Like, everything's out there. Anything you want to see. I have a great track record, and it was, again, absolutely heartbreaking because I'm like, and then I was like, okay, cool. Can we go for a coffee for the next one? And then she's like, oh yeah, I'm busy right now, but call me like in a few months or whatever. And I was like, oh, it was heartbreaking.
We don't know you.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. No one really knows anybody, right? I mean,
Yeah. So I guess the one to wrap it up on this side is the one government funding that I feel is really truly based on the project and the business plan, the marketing plan. The one that independent filmmakers have a shot at is the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund. I think everything else, you have to be really persistent, and I plan on being very persistent, but it's tough.
They have to like your face. That's kind of what I'm going with, right?
Yeah. You should smile more.
Nah.
You should smile more. Yeah. And then do you want to wrap it up with favorite movies? Because we had a question.
Yeah. Dan asked us what our favorite movies are. And let's just maybe do favorite movies of this past year.
Oh, no. Okay, you do favorite movies of the past year. I do favorite movies.
Well, we'll do both then.
Okay.
You can do of all time. I'll do of all time. And then maybe next time we'll do past year.
Okay, you go first.
No, you go first. Ladies first.
My favorite movie of all time, and it's very obscure because most people are like, what? It's Meet Joe Black. That is my all-time favorite movie ever for some reason. I love the whole Anthony Hopkins, Brad Pitt relationship. I wasn't a Brad Pitt fan until I saw that movie. He eats peanut butter off of a spoon like numerous times. It's great. Yeah. I think it was just
you set that bar so good.
I know.
But right in the middle.
He
eats peanut butter off a spoon.
It's brilliant,
I love
guys.
it.
It's brilliant.
Fantastic
As an
movie.
actor, the guy's brilliant. And then anything from Baz Luhrmann, I love from I can watch Moulin Rouge over and over and over and over again because there's just something about the energy and the music and just the way he captures, like he takes scripts and throws them in a artistic direction. I love that. Romeo and Juliet put me onto Baz Luhrmann, and I've been in love ever since.
And for me, I would always go back to The Empire Strikes Back as my favorite movie of all time, just because it had such an impact on me growing up as a kid. In terms of, I watched it at the Cinesphere. It was one of the first, PG movies that I watched in the theater, and it just had such an impact on me when the bad guys won at the end. So I would say, like, in terms of my favorite, movie of all time, it would have to probably be Empire Strikes Back. But there was a bunch of movies in the 80s and 90s that I look to all the time that I can't. I mean, that's always the problem with rating movies, right? I mean, you look at IMDb and even the ratings on it, and it's like, Back to the Future 8.7 or whatever. And for me, Back to the Future is a 10. I look back at my childhood and it was like Raiders of the Lost Ark, 10, Jaws, 10, Back to the Future, 10. It was like all these, because I just love these movies. Empire Strikes Back, 10. Are there faults in the movies? Of course there are faults in the movies, but I always feel like rating them in terms of like a number quotient. It's like, well, it's like 0.2 off. Well, what is 0.2 off? So in that era, those were when my favorite movies were made. And I look back at those, like I said, I could watch any of those over and over again, and they're still my favorite movies, right? I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark, like I said, Back to the Future, Jaws, Empire, the unaltered Star Wars trilogy, right? I mean, those are my favorite movies. And then now I would say my favorite filmmakers are, Christopher Nolan and David Fincher. I really like what they're doing. Pretty much the new Dark Knight was amazing. Interstellar, I loved Interstellar. The thing is, if you're a fan of movies, you have a lot of favorite movies. So
Meet Joe Black, favorite movie.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.